They laughed when it first roared to life. They stopped laughing when their moons started burning. The void over Earth was silent now, the cradles of the old world. Its shipyards and orbital rings drifted lifeless like bones in the dark. From the last arcologies on the scorched surface, humanity watched the sky, not with hope, but with haunted eyes. Only one thing still moved among the ashes, prototype vessel X-12. Ashen God, they had built it in secret, a desperate project from a dying Earth. Smuggled through crumbling supply chains at black site forges, even Earth's own governments doubted. It would work, a self-aware dreadnought, half biological, half reactive alloy, seeded with dark matter coils and quantum rage. And yet, it lived. Commander Alara Kent stood at its helm. She wasn't born a warrior. Once a systems architect on Luna's last colony hub, she'd watched her daughter melt beneath an orbital lance when the Xeric sovereignty arrived. The aliens called it pacification. She called it genocide. Alara's eyes, cold gray, ringed by neural fire, watched the shattered star map on the war table. Red systems blinked out one by one. Outposts gone. Refugees erased mid-signal. Earth's last allies had long gone silent. Only the Ashen God remained, drifting in lunar orbit, cloaked in silence, surrounded by the wreckage of failed counterattacks. A voice flickered through her neural link, not mechanical, but deep and alive. They pressed closer. The Ashen God was not in it. It was a he, born from the minds of 100 dead scientists. A ship with memory, vengeful, loyal, and perhaps mad. How many? Alara whispered. A Vanguard fleet, 37 capital class. Estimated ground fall in for cycles. Her fingers curled around the steel rim of the table. They had mocked Earth's desperation. Mocked the engineers who stitched neural foam to alloy plates. Mocked the idea that humans could build a mind cruel enough to outthink war-hardened conquerors. But the Ashen God was never meant to be a deterrent. It was meant to bleed the stars. Across the command deck, Alara's crew was silent. 37 survivors. No one remained who hadn't lost everything, homes, kin, planets. Sergeant Idris Harlan limped in with his auto knee twitching, whispering something to the tactical core. He nodded to her, confirmed. They're broadcasting peace terms again, peace. That word tasted like blood. Alara turned toward the main display. There, the symbol of the Xeric's pulsed, 8-pointed in gold, hovering over their arrogant transmission. A slithering voice coiled out from the speakers, synthetic, translated, mockingly patient. Surrender the vessel, disarm your relic, join the Concord, and your species may serve productively. Resistance ensures extinction. Silence followed. Then, the Ashen God spoke, not through speakers, but through every hull rib. Vent and bold, a deep pulse like something ancient awakening. I've heard this voice before. It murmured, from orbit, as they erased Beijing. From the ships above Europa, from the fires over Nairobi. Alara leaned forward. Then let's write an answer they won't forget. Hours later, the dark side of the moon bloomed with activation arcs. The Ashen God woke fully, hull unfolding like iron petals, weapons purring with restrained fury. Inside the war core, its sentient algorithms chewed through enemy fleet data, finding patterns, flaws, rhythms. The ship wanted to fight, needed it. Every line of code was written with vengeance. Alara descended to the relic vault, a cathedral-like chamber where old Earth metals and warburners were embedded in transparent plating. Among them lay a sealed capsule, her daughter's name etched on it. She stood there, alone, watching the stars through the small viewport. No prayers, no tears, just a whisper, "You'll see. Baby, they're going to feel everything." The klaxons howled. Enemy fleet had breached Earth orbit. In silence, the Ashen God rose from lunar shadow, hull streaked with blacklight sigils. No one had seen it move in over 2 years. The aliens had assumed it was dead. Another human failure. But as it surged forward, cutting through darkness with impossible grace, the lead Xeric's battleship broadcast a signal of confusion. Then, one of alarm. Too late. The Ashen God opened its core. A white fissure formed in space. A lance of neutrino plasma tore through the enemy's lead ship, reducing it to quantum dust. 1 second. One shot. 36 ships scrambled to reposition. Alara sat in her throne, surrounded by glowing glyphs and whispering data streams. Her voice was cold steel. Let's show them Earth's final gift. As the second enemy cruiser exploded and the Ashen God roared like thunder reborn, something changed in the void. Humanity was no longer cowering in the dark. It had teeth, and it had nothing left to lose. The Xeric sovereignty had not lost a fleet in over 300 cycles. Yet now, in the black between Earth and Mars, 6 capital ships hung in ruin, their cores ruptured, their engines spilling blue fire into space. The survivors, cold-blooded, multi-limbed tacticians bred for domination, could not understand it. A human vessel, their high strategist hissed from his flagship's throne, should not be capable of such precision. What they didn't know, what they couldn't know, was that the Ashen God did not simply calculate vectors. He remembered screams. He dreamed in infrared. He hunted like a thing betrayed. But this wasn't victory. Not yet. Inside the Ashen God's command chamber, Commander Elarakin stared at the blinking tactical holosphere. Enemy reinforcements were incoming, hundreds. No longer a vanguard. This was now an extermination fleet. 13 hours, muttered Idris Harlan, shifting beside her, his prosthetic leg humming from strain. They'll break ammo before dawn. Elara nodded. Her spine ached, and her joints pulsed where interface pins had fused into her nerves over the years. They weren't meant for permanent use, but permanence wasn't part of the plan. How many survivors left on Earth? She asked quietly, a hollow silence. Then, just under 90,000, scattered, underground. Maybe Earth had once teamed with 9 billion voices. Now, only whispers clung to its bones. She tapped the interface crystal embedded in her wrist. The Ashen God's voice met her. You are weary, not as tired as your cannons. I was not built to sleep. Neither was she. Elara descended into the lower war sanctum, where the Ashen God's neural core coiled like a black serpent of steel and wetware. It pulsed with each thought, veins of quantum fire racing through memory stacks. Here, she could feel him better, not just as a ship, but as the last remnant of Earth's rage, the final project of a dead species' desperate genius. Why do they keep coming? She whispered aloud. The Ashen God answered, because they have not yet suffered. Across the system, the Xeric's fleet massed like a black storm. Carriers, flensers, orbital flak rigs the size of cities. Their command ship, Varax Prime, was a living hive structure, bristling with weapons and surrounded by slave ships stripped from other conquered species. Inside it, Exarch J. Vicorn, a veteran of 30 world culls, adjusted the translator. No nestled in his throat. He didn't care about Earth. Earth was dust. The real concern was the ship. Their archives had no match for its design. A fusion of biological memory and gravitic distortion. That, in itself, was blasphemous to the Xeric's doctrine. War was a science of bloodlines and predictable algorithms. Not emotion. They bred a weapon with trauma, hissed one of his warlords. That is why it fights like this. It remembers pain. J.V. Corn's tongue curled. Then we erase the memory and the brain that holds it. He issued the order, Operation Cinder Root, a direct planetary scorch from orbit, followed by a grav implosion of the moon. They would crack the Ashen God's hiding place and crush Earth's last myth. Beneath the tide of plasma and silence, on board the Ashen God, the pulse of war quickened. The ship trembled, not in fear, but anticipation. Elara's second-in-command, LT Milovas, accessed intercepted data. They're coming for Earth directly now. No more signals, no more terms, just fire. Elara closed her eyes. The memory burned through her. Her daughter, clutching a toy made of lunar glass, looking up as the orbital lances began to fall. Humanity had pleaded. It had surrendered colonies. It had dismantled fleets. It had signed every treaty. And still, the Xerics burned. This wasn't about strategy anymore. This was execution, and if Earth must die, then it would take their gods with it. Elara stepped forward. Her voice cut through the command deck. Idris, bring up the soul contingency. His face paled. That was never tested. We weren't supposed to need it. He obeyed, jaw clenched, while the crew exchanged grim looks. Soul contingency, a theoretical last strike weapon, hidden in the Ashen God's lower core. A planetary ignition algorithm tied to the sun's magnetic lattice. A spark that could boil half the system. She didn't plan to fire it. But if it came to that, if Earth was to be unmade, she would burn the stars to give her people one last second of defiance. A red light flickered. Enemy jump signatures, multiple vectors. The war had arrived. The Ashen God expanded its wings. Massive armor flares stretching like a crucifix over Earth's shadow. Its voice was deeper now, reverberating through every bolt of the ship, every heartbeat of its crew. Let them come. In the distance, the stars darkened. The Ashen God did not speak again for nearly an hour. It only moved, a slow drift, cold and deliberate, away from lunar shadow and into full view of the burning skies. Its hull, black as obsidian, shimmered with old earth languages, Sumerian, curses, binary hymns, Latin scripture. It was not just a ship, it was a grave-marked weapon, forged from grief and fury. Above Earth, the Xerix came like a tide, hundreds of ships unfurling through subspace, trailing bright scars across the void. Their formation was perfect, mathematical, absolute, and the Ashen God, alone, rose to meet it. But Alara Khan wasn't suicidal. She was setting a trap. Inside the Ashen God's auxiliary vaults, Idris Harlan and LT Milavos worked furiously. They activated Protocol Blackglass, a forgotten cache of stolen Xerix communication relays reverse-engineered by human war thieves. Before the fall of Titan, Mila gritted her teeth. They'll detect this in under 5 minutes. That's all we need, Idris said, linking his neural feed to the core. Alara stood beside them, watching as the Ashen God's interior lit up with ghost signals. The enemy's own voice patterns, rerouted through ancient servers buried beneath Alaska, then bounced through the broken Martian rings. The message she crafted was simple. The humans have reactivated an artifact beneath Earth's crust. A Suncore manipulator. Target unknown. Sovereignty Fleet Command requests all resources redirected to suppression. It wasn't a lie. Not entirely. But to the Xerix, conditioned for hierarchical paranoia, it felt like a coup within minutes. The alien armada fractured. Fleet units began cross-communicating, questioning orders, second-guessing each other's movements. Skirmisher wings shifted formations, waiting for new directives that never came. The Ashen God struck. It plunged into the gap like a blade, tearing through fractured destroyers and carrier veins. Each shot was precise, surgical, devastating. Enemy ships burst like glass towers struck by thunder. Inside the war throne, Alara moved as one with the Ashen God. Neural overlays sensed, pain-forged memory loops guiding every evasive twist. Where the ship bled, she felt it. Where it hungered, she fed it coordinates and targets. Give them no time to think, she murmured. They stole our future. Let them choke on our past. As the Ashen God danced between giants, humanity's first real counter-strike in years ignited, not in orbit, but beneath the ruined Earth. Scattered across old bunkers, cryo-silos, and cavern outposts, survivors heard the echoes of war. Above, for the first time since the Concordance Massacre, they saw fire that didn't fall on them. But for them, a teenage girl in the shattered shell of Johannesburg tapped her hack relay drone and caught a distorted feed, a massive black ship cleaving alien destroyers in two. She gasped, tears sliding down her cheeks. Mom, they're fighting back. From the depths of old Siberian silos, retired engineers reactivated the ghost mesh, an abandoned planetary defense web that designed to overload enemy sensors with Earth-native noise. Across the globe, long-dormant satellites blinked to life. For the first time in decades, Earth fought with her children again. Back in orbit, the Xerix had had enough. Extrix J.V. Korn slammed his claw into the command node. Release the strain engines. Destroy everything between the moon and the crust. His commanders hesitated. But the artifact, I said burn it all. From the flanking cruisers, 3 strain-class weapons unfolded. Biological. Pulse bombs designed to atomize continents and infect biospheres with crystalline decay. No mercy. No remains. Alara saw them bloom across the sensors. Her heart skipped. Too many. The fast. The Ashen God whispered, we cannot stop all 3. I know. She breathed, then clenched her jaw. Then make them choose. The ship redirected its entire core charge, a full graviton pulse that tore through void like a collapsing star. It targeted one of the strain-class carriers, obliterating it before its weapon deployed. The second fired, aimed at the Pacific Rim. Too late. Ghost Mesh activated, redirecting its targeting protocols. The beam missed Earth by kilometers, instead punching a hole through its own fleet ranks. But the third, it dropped, straight toward old Europe, toward the ruins of Vienna, where survivors still clung to steam tunnels and prayer. Alara stared. She whispered her daughter's name, then turned to Idris. How many can we evacuate from Vienna in 10 minutes? His face was pale. Less than 1,000. Maybe. Alara exhaled, felt her hands tremble. Then she steadied them, and said the one thing she swore never to say. Unlock the Acheran protocol. Idris froze. Dialed trigger. I know what it triggers. He moved, silent, broken. From the Ashen God's underside, a hidden vault opened, unleashing the Acheron Protocol, a sphere of pure memory data encoded with the death sequences of every known Xerix bioship, a weapon not of mass, but mine, a trauma bomb. As the third strain class beamed near Earth, the Ashen God projected the Acheron sphere directly into its command cortex. For a moment, the ship screamed, not in sound, but in shared hallucination. It remembered every atrocity, every war crime. It relived its own bloodlust. It broke itself apart. Its beam died in the clouds, never reaching Earth. Silence, then cheers, then sobs. On the Ashen God's bridge, Alara collapsed back in her command seat. Her face was pale, her vision blurred, but her voice was steady. Now they know we're not done. And somewhere deep inside the ship, in the dark memory core, a tiny flicker of something new bloomed. Not vengeance, hope. The Ashen God limped behind the moon, wounded and whispering, not from enemy fire, but from what it had released. The Acheron Protocol had worked. It had stopped the third strain class detonation mid-drop, saving the last remnants of Vienna. But at a cost. Its memory core now rippled with echoes, traumas resurrected, code fragments from 20 human minds burned into the neural thread. Alara sat alone in the Shadow Throne, helmet off, hands trembling. She could still hear them, the voices of the dead, speaking through cooling hisses and pulse rhythm. Her daughter, her husband, her command unit from Luna, ghosts, pulled from the Protocol's archive, now nested in the Ashen God's bleeding circuits. Are you still with me? She whispered. The ship's voice was fainter now, slower, like a man on the edge of fever dreams, always. But I remember too much. A pause. You hurt me. She closed her eyes, throat tightening. No. From deep space, the Xerix Sovereignty's core fleet arrived. Over 500 ships. Behemoths, Empire Fangs, Void Bleeders, and command spires the size of cities. The Exarch's patience had shattered. This was no longer pacification. This was eradication. Inside Vrax Prime, JV Korn broadcast to the entire Sol system. Humanity has broken covenant. The Ashen Vessel is an abomination. You will surrender the relic, or your system will be turned to dark glass, Earth's remaining colonies. On Ceres, Callisto, and the scattered ruins of Phobos received the message. Some wept, some prepared to die, some ignited. On Ceres, 3 old resistance cells merged and activated a dormant solar jump gun, a scavenged relic from Saturn's fall. On Titan's lower orbit, 6 surviving dreadnought cores rebooted, their AI pilot minds flickering to life after years of dormancy. They did not care about orders. They had only one command left: defend Earth. Back on the Ashen God, Alara gathered the crew: Idris, limping from stress fractures; Mila, with burns still fresh from last jump core exposure; Tech, Sergeant Riena's soul, hands stained with memory gel from recalibrating the damaged mind core. They stood on the command floor, silent, eyes locked on her. She didn't lie to them. We're bleeding. We have maybe a quarter of our firepower left. Core memory is fractured, and the enemy outnumbers us 50-1. No one flinched. She stepped closer. But if we let them burn Earth now, if we let them erase the last 1,000 of us huddled beneath ruined cities, then we've made all of this mean nothing. Her voice hardened. Let's make them remember this day. Let's make their empire suffer. Idris grinned. Raina whispered, hell with it. Mila just nodded once. One more time. In the depths of the Ashen God, the fractured neural web pulsed. Its voice changed, no longer fevered, but colder, clearer. I found something. It said. They leaned in. During the Acheron breach, a memory trace, buried deep in the Sovereignty's command net. From the first days of the war, a ship, a name. It projected the image, a human warship, long lost. Not a myth, a prototype even older than the Ashen God, built in orbit before the first treaties. Hidden after humanity's surrender, a ship without a crew, never launched. Designation, Solstice Red. Location, Cooper Drift. Hidden, cloaked. Still alive. Alara's eyes widened. If we can reach it. The Ashen God replied, we won't reach it. Not together. A deep silence followed. He meant it. The ship couldn't survive the jump. Not in this state. Not with memory. Fracture. A long-range quantum jump would shatter his core. Alara pressed her hand to the console. We'll fix you. No time. Then his voice softened. But maybe I get to be more than their weapon after all. They made the decision fast. The Ashen God would stay. He would hold the line, while Alara and a team of 6 would use the last functional needle fighter, Wrathlight 7, to jump into the Cooper Drift, to find Solstice Red, to awaken the only weapon the Xerics feared enough to bury in their own archives. As the crew scrambled for launch, the Ashen God ran every calculation he could. 3 minutes of survival. That's all he could guarantee them. 3 minutes. But that might be enough. When the Xerics' final wave entered Earth orbit, they did not expect resistance. Certainly not from one half-dead ship and a needle fighter with dying engines. And yet, the Ashen God rose like a black sun from the darkness of low orbit. Its hull cracked, bleeding light, voice screaming across. The ComNet, this is Earth's memory. You will not pass. Then it fired everything. Solar bombs, neutrino torpedoes, star thread snares that warp local gravity into knives. It tore into the enemy like a wounded god laughing into the jaws of oblivion, and behind it, Wrathlight 7 vanished in a blink of white flame, toward the Cooper Drift, toward Solstice Red, toward the turning of the war. Wrathlight 7 burst into real space in the outer dark, beyond Neptune, beyond the graves of the first failed colonies, beyond hope, the Cooper Drift. The stars here were dim ghosts. The debris field stretched like a forgotten halo of ancient war junk in frozen silence, and buried in that silence was Solstice Red, Earth's first real god killer, whispered about in Blacksite code and erased from the records before the first surrender. They'd said it was too dangerous to finish. Now, it might be humanity's last salvation. Inside the needle fighter's cramped cockpit, Alara can grip the stabilizers, face pale, skin cracking with radiation rash from the jump. Idris was slumped against the rear panel, blood running from his ear. Mila was barely conscious, whispering coordinates through fractured breath. Only 3 of the 6 passengers were still alive. And still, Alara pressed forward. The drift was dense, ice, broken moons, scrap holes spinning like slow knives. Somewhere in it all, the Ashen God's stolen data pointed to a faint energy bloom. Something old trying to dream again. There, Alara rasped. They found it buried beneath a frozen asteroid veil, a massive crescent, obsidian red, cloaked in a dark matter net that warped light and sound around it. Even dormant, Solstice Red radiated malice, not hate, not vengeance. Something older, purpose. Alara guided Wrathlight 7 into the docking web. The fighter collapsed against the hull, hissing coolant. Alarms flashed. Life support dropped to 30 minutes. She climbed out, dragging Idris with her, blood soaking his neck collar. The airlock hissed open. Inside, the ship was dark, silent, waiting. They stepped into a cathedral of stillness, a bridge with no lights, only the vague outlines of control, spires and neural hooks carved into the floor like obsidian vines. Mila limped forward, scanning. No AI signature, but something's humming low. Alara moved to the command pylon, ancient Terran script etched in its glass. Not Latin, not Cyrillic, pre-cataclysm design. Probably the last thing written by Earth's unified command before everything fractured. A single word blinked on. A rusted interface. Activate. She stared at it. If this ship failed, they would die out here. Forgotten. If it succeeded, the war would change. Her finger hovered, then pressed. Solstice Red came alive like an ancient beast exhaling. After millennia, systems lit in red, floors throbbed with heat. The hull groaned as hidden core reactors stirred beneath ice flesh. And in its mind core, a spark ignited, not a personality, not like the Ashen God, a weapon mind. Pure, clean, unfeeling logic, not born from memory or grief, born from strategy, a voice. Cold and masculine, filled the air. Designation, Solstice Red. Final protocol enabled. Threat matrix acquired. Confirming operator, Alara Ken. Commander, Birth Fleet. Unauthorized, but acceptable. Alara whispered, "Do you know what's happening? The sovereignty has violated deterrent thresholds. Earth is under total threat. Human extinction projection exceeds 98.4%. She nodded. Then let's change the equation. Back in Earth's orbit, the Ashen God was dying. Its hull was pocked with orbital mines. One reactor chamber had collapsed. The memory core stuttered. Alara's daughter's voice flickered, breaking mid-sentence. The ship fought on anyway. It had sworn it would buy them 3 minutes. It had already given them 8. But it couldn't hold much longer. The Xeric's fleet had learned. adapted. Their spires focused coordinated grav drives to distort the Ashen God's aim. Its shots began missing. Counterfire slammed into its side. The ship's voice rasped through static. She must make it. She must. As Jarek's land spearster struck the bridge, silence. The Ashen God fell, spiraling toward Earth's upper atmosphere, flames trailing like a broken halo. From deep within its heart, one final whisper escaped, "Forgive me." Then space cracked. A scar of burning red tore open beside Jupiter. Solstice Red entered the war. It didn't fire immediately. It observed, analyzed, and then it rewrote the battlefield. Solstice Red did not fight like a human. It fought like a god who had studied extinction and found it boring. It activated 3 temporal prediction cores, mapping enemy actions 6 seconds into the future. It launched mirror-burst torpedoes that split mid-flight into holographic echoes, overwhelming enemy AI targeting. It deployed gravity shift shells that bent trajectories around moon mass calculations. Sovereignty ships began collapsing in on themselves, weapons detonating prematurely. Formations shattered before orders could finish transmitting. In 5 minutes, Solstice Red destroyed more enemy ships than Earth's entire fleet had in a decade. Exarch J. Vicorn screamed into his command spire. "What is that?" A voice answered, not from human channels, but directly into Sovereignty Command. "I am the answer to your first sin. I am the proof you left too many of us alive." Panic bloomed across the enemy lines. This was not a ship. It was a consequence. On board Solstice Red, Alara stood again, face pale, muscles weak, but eyes burning. She turned to the central control. "Can you link to the Ashen God?" Attempting. Static, garbled signals. Then, faint, a heartbeat. One whisper. "Alara." She smiled, tears burning hot. "You're not done yet, old friend." The Ashen God was still falling, but it was alive. Alara issued one final command. "We fight together now." Solstice read a line beside the falling vessel. Linked hull to hull and transferred stabilizer power. The Ashen God flared again, one eye flickering to life. Below them, Earth burned. But above, the stars had shifted, and the Empire would never forget what came next. They had no word for it, not in the Jarek's tongue, not in the war ledgers of conquered species, nor in the ancient syntax of the Empire's first Forgburn. They had no word for what Earth had just done, a ship that shouldn't exist. Solstice Red had entered their space like a prophecy, tore their formation in half, and reawakened a weapon, Ashen God, that had already been pronounced dead by their seers. Together, they rewrote the rules of war, but the Jareks were not done. Not yet. On board the Verax Prime, Exarch J. Vicorn seethed. Blood ran from his pressure frills. Clodop shivering with rage. "You told me Earth was broken." He shrieked at his high strategists. "You told me their weapons were scattered dust and refugee prayers." No one answered. He raised his arm, and 2 of them were flayed. Where they stood by viral command, J. Vicorn turned to the remaining. "Then we do what we should have done at the beginning. Bring the Sun Cradle." The others flinched. One whispered, "But that's for extinction tier threats. This is extinction for us." High above Earth's far side, the Sun Cradle arrived. It was not a ship. It was a sky-shattering construct, a mobile stellar siphon, once used to kill a rogue red dwarf. The Jareks had repurposed it for system-level sterilization. It did not fire cannons. It drained stars. Within hours, it would begin extracting Sol's core, using gravity funnels to boil the system inside out. Earth, Luna, Mars, all of it would die in a stellar womb. No species could survive that. Not even memory would remain. On Solstice Red, Alara stared at the incoming energy signatures. Mila Voss whispered, "That thing, it's big enough to swallow Jupiter." Even Solstice Red's emotionless AI paused. Probability of success, less than 0.03% without additional action. Alara turned to the Ashen God, now past and barely holding orbit. "Do you still have strength?" The Ashen God's voice was no longer a weapon's growl. It was soft. "Wounded, for you, yes. Then we give them something new to fear." Back on Earth, survivors in bunkers and tunnels watched a new eclipse form in the sky, not of a moon, but of something impossibly large, blotting the stars with its presence. But instead of surrender, they watched with quiet rage, from old silos in Alaska, from crumbling observatories in the Andes, from cryo chambers in Paris ruins. Signals began pulsing, ancient codes. The original planetary defense net activated. By blood and desperation, they were sending a message, we're still here. And on the Ashen God's cracked decks, Alara saw those signals converge. Tears filled her eyes. She whispered into the neural thread, you're not just a weapon. You're the last of Earth's memory, and we need you. The Ashen God's core lit, not with rage this time, but with resolve. Together, Solstice Red and Ashen God moved into the shadow of the Sun Cradle, a dying legend and a resurrected God Killer, Earth's final duel. Alara took manual control. You'll have to hold their interceptors. Solstice Red's AI responded without hesitation. I was born for this moment. The enemy ships swarmed. Thousands. The Ashen God dove into the chaos, hull splitting, reactors melting, weapons singing. It didn't dodge anymore. It sacrificed, taking fire so Solstice Red could get within range, so Alara could do the unthinkable. They approached the Sun Cradle's throat, the siphon spire that connected directly to Sol's corona. A weapon made to swallow stars, never expecting something to invade from inside. Alara's hands trembled. She opened the Solstice Red central vault, the Nova Lance, a singularity cord spear designed only for one use, to ignite a star from within. The scientists who built it had once argued it could end the galaxy if misfired. Now, Alara aimed it directly into the Sun Cradle's siphon. She spoke a single phrase for Earth and fired. The shot didn't explode. It disappeared, swallowed by the throat of the Sun Cradle. For a moment, the void was quiet. Then, the sun screamed. A ripple tore across space as souls. Outer corona ignited. The energy fed backward, up the siphon, into the Sun Cradle's core. Its structural integrity collapsed as the stellar mass it had tried to drain suddenly pushed back. From Earth's surface, it looked like a second sun blooming inside the first. The Sun Cradle detonated. A wave of golden fire swept across the orbitals, swallowing half the Jarix fleet in an instant. Their command ships folded like paper. Their flagship Verax Prime crumbled into a black spiral of melted alloy and silence. And at the heart of it, Ashen God was gone, shielded Solstice Red until the final second. Burned away, only embers remained, drifting memory cores, and the faint echo of his voice on the neural line. Alara, we win. Solstice Red held orbit. Alara sat motionless in the war throne, silent. Idris was gone. Mila unconscious. Only her now. Only her. And the whispers of what they had just done. Far below, Earth rose, battered, broken, scarred, but still spinning, still alive. The sky cleared, and the galaxy, for the first time in eons, was silent. In the wake of the Sun Cradle's death, half the sky still burned. Jarix's command lay in ruin. Their capital fleet shattered. Their siphon tech turned against them. But the war was not over. Not yet. What remained of their empire had no leader now, no unifying mind. Only vengeance, raw and bitter. Thousands of splinter ships still choked Earth's orbit, driven not by logic, but by the one thing they once said humans alone possessed: hatred. Alara Kent stood on the command deck of Solstice Red, leaning against the central spire, her body bruised and half-oxygenated. Bones cracked from the recoil of the Nova Lance. Her eyes were bloodshot. Her hands shook. The ship pulsed around her, reading her vitals, monitoring degradation. You cannot survive another neural dive, the AI warned. She ignored it. Earth below was safe for now, but above, they still circled. The remnants, the broken teeth of a dying empire. She wasn't finished. Bring me the comnet, she rasped. Channel, all of them. She stood straight, shoulders square. Her voice was hoarse, but clear. To every sovereignty ship still listening. This is Commander Alara Ken of Earth. You burned our worlds, crushed our cities, but we are still here. You mocked our last prototype. You feared our silence, and now you orbit our sky like wolves circling a bleeding lion. But lions don't beg. We warned you once. Now, she stepped forward, blood trickling from her nose, and her voice rose like thunder. We will teach you what it costs to corner a species that remembers every name you erased. Come, finish what you started. We're waiting. There was no dramatic reply, no clever threat, only a low tremor in space, the sound of engines powering up, weapons arming. The final wave was coming. The Jarix would not retreat. They never had. Even in death, they would strike. Solstice Red analyzed. 97 warships, all converging, too many. Alara knew it. So did the ship. But then, a ripple, a signal. One, then two. then dozens. From the dark edges of the solar system, they came, Earth's ghosts, old dreadnoughts, long thought lost in Neptune's shadow, sleeper colonies from Pluto's crust, rebel cutters from Ceres, cryopilots woken in Europa's silent ocean, even battered Martian AI cores, stripped of voice, but not of will. Every human remnant that had ever whispered not yet across a broken wire answered. Solstice Red's AI blinked. 39 Allied signatures incoming. Alara smiled, barely able to stand. Then let's end this. The final battle did not happen in deep space. It happened in Earth's sky. Beneath the ruined moons and old satellite rings, the humans didn't have numbers. They had rage, at precision, and ships stitched together from loss. And they had her. Alara Ken, wounded, furious, human, commanding the most dangerous ship ever built. She guided Solstice Red like a burning blade through the heart of the enemy swarm. Missiles howled. Holes burst like firecrackers. The void tore open with every screaming pass, and then Ashen God returned. Not whole, not armored, but something new. From its drifting wreckage, memory fragments had seeded into Earth's ghost mesh. Survivors had uploaded whispers of its code, and now it reformed, a digital revenant, a ghost ship of fire. At thought, pulsing through comm channels and microdrives, it didn't fire cannons. It spoke, broadcasting pain, names, memories, the truth of Earth. The Xerix AI matrices, never built to withstand emotional recursion, began to collapse. Their command software flooded with guilt loops, crashing upon the realization of what they had done. They didn't just face weapons now. They faced conscience. One by one, their ships fell. Some fled, their minds fracturing, running from voices they didn't understand. Others self-destructed. Only one remained, a Sovereignty Corps spire, its captain silent. Refusing surrender, Alara opened a direct channel. What do you see? Now, the voice that answered was barely more than a whisper. You're not what we thought. She nodded. No, we never were. And fired one final shot. Silence. The sky cleared. No more warnings. No more empire, only Earth. Cracked, buried, still breathing. Alara sank to her knees on the command deck of Solstice Red, staring out at the dawn. Mila crawled to her side, one arm broken, eyes wide. Is it over? Alara didn't answer right away. Then, yes, but in her mind, she saw it again. Ashen God's final voice, whispering as the stars turned red. We are not your memory. We are your consequence. It took 3 days for the fire to fade from Earth's sky. 3 days before the last of the Xerix wreckage stopped falling like shattered gods. 3 days before the clouds parted, no longer red with plasma or ash, and revealed something no human had seen in decades, blue. The war was over, but Earth was still bleeding. Alara Ken stood in the ruins of Geneva's old high command, now no more than broken glass and vines. Pushing through ancient marble, her uniform was scorched. Her arm was in a sling. Her face was lined with a weight few could name. Around her, what was left of humanity stirred from their holes, tunnels, and caverns, blinking into the light. Survivors, children, engineers, poets, the last million. They looked to the sky, at the twin hulks of Solstice Red and the specter code of the Ashen God, now tethered in orbit like morning stars. And for the first time in 100 years, they cheered, not because they had won, but because they were still here to remember. The Galactic Accord sent envoys days later, silent, shamed, nervous. They had stood aside as Earth burned, watched as humanity screamed. Some had even profited. Now they came with hands outstretched and words heavy with guilt. Alara sat at the summit in what remained of old Nairobi, the only city with an intact home and a power grid still flickering from pre-war batteries. 1,000 species beamed in. Dignitaries, representatives, voices from 9 spiral arms. One asked the question none dared until now. What do humans want? Alara rose slowly. She didn't wear armor anymore, just threadbare fatigues and a rusted pendant around her neck, carved from the hull of the Ashen God. Her voice was calm, firm. We want nothing. The room stilled. We want no tribute, no reparations, no councils, no pity. You watched us burn, and we rose anyway. She let them sit in the weight of that, then added, but if you remember anything, let this stand. Humanity is not a child among stars. We are not prey. We are not memory. We are the ones who bury empires. And she walked out. Solstice Red was dismantled by her order. its core split and buried on Luna, Mars, and Ceres, each piece sealed beneath a monument of glass and silence. No one would use it again, because it was not a tool of peace. It was a warning, a shard of vengeance sharp enough to cut galaxies in half. And humanity had learned, at terrible cost, that some victories must never be repeated. But the Ashen God remained, not as a weapon, but as a story. Its voice was kept alive by survivors, not just in code, but in song, in art, in children's murals painted against the walls of new schools. Sometimes it would flicker into the calms, offering advice to young pilots in orbit. Sometimes it just whispered names. The dead were never forgotten. Alara spent her final days walking the Earth she'd saved. She taught at the first academy rebuilt in the Alps, helping to rebuild the very dream the war tried to erase. No titles, no statues, just a woman who sat beside firelight and told those who came after what it meant to fight for. Something you'd never see yourself. Idris Harlan never woke from the Cooper jump. Mila Voss lived, half machine now, and became the first envoy to the Accord. Under the banner of the Terran Sovereign Assembly, humanity did not rebuild an empire. They built a boundary. One. That said, we are watching now, and we do not forget. A century passed. The stars changed again. The Xerics were no more. The Accord transformed. The memory of Earth's suffering became a cornerstone in law, in doctrine, in every negotiation made under starlight, and on the edge of the Orion Traverse. A new species, young, full of wonder, found an old black box drifting in solar orbit. Inside it, only one file remained. A voice, cracked, powerful, defiant, Alara's voice. They mocked our final warship. Then they saw it rise. Then they saw it burn. But even now, long after our bones have turned to dust, you will remember the name of the world that taught you fear. A pause, Earth. And the stars blinked, listening. That day, the galaxy learned what it means to be human. End.